Testing, testing. Okay, hey everyone. While you're waiting, I can keep you engaged a little bit. Can I have a show of hands for people here who have used ChatGPT? Oh man, that's like
cheating on your homework.
Write my code for me.
Same.
I'm employed.
Maybe we can have like, I'm curious for the audience, what are some of like the coolest things you've seen in AI recently that have either made you excited or made you like a little bit apprehensive?
Can it be something I built?
Yeah, maybe you can raise hands and I can call on different people.
There was someone who actually chained like 4 GPT-4s together in an infinite loop with different prompts. So they would have one that would like, you give it an overall task, and then it would generate different tasks off of that task, like subtasks, and then they would have a different one like prioritize them, and then we would try and solve the task. So it's like a whole thought process between 4 different AIs all intermingling in 100 lines of code, which is pretty cool.
Moralistic projects, they're trying to copy ideas coming out of Doom, where like one of the ideas is using AI to conglomerate spiritual texts in order to find the true source of spirituality and moralistic faith. And anytime that ChatGPT and certain other AI programs have done so, whenever they put in the Old Testament or other such texts, it gets very aggressive.
Yes, thank you.
Hi. I actually am a machine learning engineer by trade, which is why I thought it'd be cool here to listen to you guys. Something that I personally built, I thought was cool, which I can't talk a ton about, but let's just say there's like a very big animation client. And they wanted, not just animation, they do movies. And they basically wanted a giant linter for like race, like age, like they wanted to be able to do diversity in all of their scripts.
No, we don't want diversity.
Anyway, and so personally, I think it's cool. It actually performs much better than ChatGPT because ChatGPT cannot do things like unspecified gender, at least right now. So basically, I built a thing that beats ChatGPT. So I'm proud of that.
Very cool. In the red?
So it's kind of a bit of insane, but I don't necessarily know if it's something exactly about that AI itself, but like the discussion around the idea of taking AI and what happens
Cool. I might cut off the Q&A for now. To take a selfie with you guys. And it's like T-1 minute, so we'll just get ready here to kick things off.
Hello? Oh, okay. Yeah, so this year we really went all out and we hired Snoop Dogg to do the intro for so, one more minute?
It's not quite 6:30 yet. We just want everyone to make it for the show. But we can continue with the discussions. We have a hand over there.
I actually work for a private platform for insiders. Oh, I actually have access to a very good 100 AI actually is scarce. Especially minutes that
Yeah. Okay, we'll go ahead and kick it off.
Okay, cool. Gonna hand over to our MC, Snoop Dogg.
Yo, what's good? Anime Boston 2023. It's your MC, Snoop Dogg, here to introduce an exciting panel that'll spark your imagination and bring you to the cutting edge of technology. Are you ready for a mind-blowing journey into the world of machine intelligence and anime? Then buckle up, cause we're about to dive deep. Our panel, titled Current State of the Art Machine Intelligence and Anime, will explore the fascinating differences between the portrayal of machine intelligence in anime and the actual state of research in this field today. Our esteemed panelists, Chen, Sonam, Ghosh, and Wang, will guide you through a brief history, discuss the latest developments, and share their thoughts on the future of machine intelligence. Together, we'll examine how close we are to realizing some of the incredible technologies featured in popular anime like Ghost in the Shell, Ergo Proxy, and Sword Art Online. By dissecting the plausibility of these concepts, our panelists will help bridge the gap between fiction and reality. But that's not all, folks. To wrap things up, we'll have an electrifying live demonstration showcasing the power of current state-of-the-art deep neural network algorithms. You won't want to miss this. So, Anime Boston 2023, are you ready to witness the fusion of machine intelligence and the anime universe? Then let's get this show on the road. Give it up for Justin Chen, Sonam, Ghosh, and Tony Wang as they lead us through an unforgettable journey.
So that was completely generated by GPT-4. So we just gave it this prompt for an introduction for our panel and a description. And then the voice synthesis was done by Speechify. Yeah, we can take the one question.
Yeah, next time you host this panel, can you get a lolly to do the intro instead of Snoop Dogg?
Sure, yeah. Cool. So I'm Justin. I'm a senior software engineer at BU. I did my master's there where I studied distributed deep learning.
I'm Tony. I'm a PhD student at MIT. I study AI safety.
I'm Sonam. I'm a data engineer at Meta. Also graduated from Boston University about 5 years ago.
Cool. And welcome to our panel. So what is machine intelligence? So the term machine intelligence was coined by some people at Google Brain as a way to distinguish from artificial intelligence, which was kind of getting some bad rep where it's kind of mixed with sci-fi and whatnot. So they took the idea of machine learning, which is the specific subfield of AI that deals with learning from data, and they combine that with artificial intelligence to create this new term, machine intelligence. And you can see examples of that every day. There's ChatGPT, there's things in Google search, TikTok, Meta, DeepMind, Amazon. So we're interacting with machine intelligence every day. And the thesis of this panel is to kind of have a public discussion about where we are with respect to artificial intelligence and how it's perceived in or characterized in anime. Yeah, so some examples that heavily incorporate AI are Sword Art Online, Ghost in the Shell, Steins Gate. I guess those are kind of self-explanatory, and we'll get more into some of the details of where we are. If you're a machine learning nerd, you can kind of imagine KL divergence. Maybe that doesn't mean too much unless you're a machine learning engineer. But anyways, we're kind of measuring KL divergence here between reality and anime reality. So we're kind of minimizing this distance. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, we're going to show some examples from some of these animes later on, and actually show that we're not too far off from some of these capabilities. And there's a bunch more anime that has some machine intelligence in it. We're also going to kind of go through this relatively quickly because we want to kind of get more to the demos. But yeah, so a lot of people think AI started probably sometime maybe 20, 30 years ago, but the very first example of machine learning or artificial intelligence, I guess machine learning, actually started in 1943, where people were trying to mathematically model neurons. And so there's this really famous paper by McCall and Betts. Fast forwarding a little bit, people were experimenting with these things, and this video over here is Jan LeCun at IBM showing that he can recognize handwritten digits. Fast forwarding a little bit more, Deep Blue beat Garrett Kasparov. Google started Google X and self-driving cars. But modern machine learning, or this AI revolution, really started in 2012 with the ImageNet challenge. And so there's this group at Stanford that collected this very large data set of images with over 1,000 categories And the goal was to come up with algorithms that could identify these things in these images. And then a team from University of Toronto, Alex Krivetsky, Elias Discover, who is one of the co-founders and CTO, I think, CTO of OpenAI, and Jeff Hinton, who's one of the 3 godfathers of deep learning, and also at Google Brain, developed AlexNet, and they blew the competition out of the water. And so year to year, it was kind of like maybe a percentage increase, but when they entered the competition, the difference between their first place submission and second place was about like 13%. So it all of a sudden it's like really clear that if you have a large amount of data and parallel compute, because they're able to implement their AlexNet on GPU, then you can scale these things up really quickly and do amazing things. And then Ilya actually recently talked about that at NVIDIA GTC, where he was talking about like where he really believed in scale. And so we can see some of these things with the ChatGPT. Fast forward a little bit, DeepMind demonstrated that deep reinforcement learning could do amazing things. Sequence to sequence, I think, is a really important thing because this is a precursor to what we see with ChatGPT, but it was using a different model and it was not as clear that these kind of things would work. And I guess there's an example. Oh,
Can we have sound on the computers?
yeah, thank you. So here's just like an example of like a task that we call image classification.
What's too sweet?
That wasn't very funny.
And here's like an example.
Sugar is such a human weakness.
So fast forwarding a little bit more, some more recent stuff. AlphaGo was a really big thing back in 2016 where DeepMind developed this program to beat Lee Sedol, who was an 18-time world champion in the game of Go, and widely regarded as 10 years ahead of his time. That was $1 million match. Lee Sedol, AlphaGo won 4-1, Lee Sedol lost 1-4. And I think it started to open people's eyes to what it meant to be creative or what it meant to be human in some sense, like what capabilities we have that separate us from machines. And then they developed AlphaZero, which was able to play Go, Shogi, and chess, all on its own from scratch. Demis describes it as like, they would just have it learn from scratch in the morning, and at tea time, because both they're from England, it would become like the greatest chess entity in the world. And it was just playing against itself. And then we have some other advancements like DeepMind developed this algorithm to play StarCraft. They developed this algorithm to learn how to fold proteins. So given an amino acid sequence, how do you predict the structure of the protein? This is another one of those like large step changes where in previous year to year is like only a percentage change. But the downstream consequences of being able to do this particular task means things like being able to cure a lot of diseases, come up with like new materials and whatnot. And so they have like over like 200 million proteins or something like that in the database. And then OpenAI released Codex, which was a very nascent version of ChatGPT. It could do some cool things, but it wasn't as strong. And then they released DALL-E, so you could generate images from text. And that brings us to last December when they released ChatGPT, which was the fastest consumer app in history. They got 100 million users in about like 2 months, compared to like Instagram and TikTok, which took maybe like a year. So it was quite impressive, which is why they got $10 billion from Microsoft.
I'll also add a comment on ChatGPT. So the core technology for ChatGPT was actually around in 2021, and OpenAI, their initial plan was to kind of put their API online and just have other people build ChatGPT. They're like, we put this open thing out there, let's have the world build it. But I think people didn't really know what these models were capable of. So it took them themselves to actually build ChatGPT to show the world what it was capable of. And I think we're in a similar place here. Like, we don't actually know what the latest models like GPT-4 are capable of. What we're seeing right now is just like a few weeks worth of tinkering away at it. So possibly in the next months, we'll actually see a lot out of it, as not as the technology improves, but just as people realize what it's actually capable of.
Yeah, and actually, like the base model itself, so GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. An acquaintance of mine was actually on that paper in 2017. It's called Attention is All You Need. And so it actually came out in 2017, but then OpenAI realized that you could train these models in a specific way to get them to do these amazing things, which wasn't really obvious back then. But this slide, we're just trying to demonstrate that, like, in the past few weeks, I mean, well, it starts in February, but like just in the few weeks at least when GPT-4 came out, it kind of felt like a few years went by, just like how much progress is happening. Like if you follow machine learning Twitter, it's like pretty insane. And so like we have all these things like Bing powered by GPT. We have like all this research that came out. Like these models can now learn to like use tools, and so they're not just like trained on Wikipedia and the internet and whatnot, but when you hook them up to the internet, they can actually start using things. So like their cutoff date, maybe they're trained until like 2021, and if you just query the base model, it'll only know things up until then. But it can now like read the internet live and use tools live, and so that has like a lot of consequences. Oh, one small thing, yeah. So in February 2016, Corridor Digital made this anime from some Stable Diffusion techniques called rock paper scissors. So just repping their shirt. That was really cool because like it shows like the power of like when you open source this technology and just non-researchers are able to do these really amazing things that researchers weren't able to do. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, just like a whole slew of like other things. So I guess like yeah, we'll just kind of move over this quickly. But yeah, here's like a snippet of that. It's like
So they recorded themselves in the top left, and then they applied some AI to transform it into kind of an illustrated style on the bottom right.
The throne and the lives of millions under its rule. I challenge you, you fool! You know not what you do! I challenge you to rock, paper, cross blades!
Have you gone insane, brother? You project such confidence, and yet your eye quivers. I know you too well, but if I can read you so clearly, then how can I win? If I can read the slightest detail on your face, you can read mine. We're brothers. We think we're different, but on the seabed of instinct where, like weak sunlight, rays of thought are unable to pierce, we are the same. You will predict my every move.
Poor brother, I can sense your fear. We have spent every day of our lives together. You are an open book to me. It will be trivial to defeat you thanks to my ancient technique.
I can already feel him in my mind. The moment I pick my move, you'll know. For the good of the kingdom, I must win. But how? One! The answer is obvious when I think about it, but it terrifies me. Two! If he's in my mind, I must have no mind. I must eliminate all thought. Three! Yes, if I never make a decision, he will never be able to predict me. It's beautifully perfect. Father, you'd be proud. Shoot!
Oh yeah, so the technique here is the same technique, similar technology behind things like Midjourney and DALL-E 2. I guess, yeah, not too much more to say there. If you want to know the exact details, I would recommend watching the video. And then, again, one thing Justin said that was really cool, like the things that they did I think are like publishable research, but because the technology was open and people can just be creative with it, you can get like technically I think this is like research worthy stuff, but like they have a lot more artistic talent than most researchers, so you get this nice video instead.
Yeah, so these are some outputs from Midjourney 5. So we kind of want to like show like have like a discussion around these new generative techniques for images. And so here, like someone wanted to have a model and sample some different outfits that they were trying out for whatever fashion they're interested in. And so you can kind of see like, and this is the latest version which came out I think like a week and a half ago. It's pretty realistic. I don't know if like any of you would be able to, or if anyone would be able to just tell if that was like real or if it was an actual, or if it was like generated. So some examples that you can use these things for are like stock images. Some other examples are like creative media. So this one, someone wants like merge like Game of Thrones with this one like someone like wanted to generate like a futuristic cyberpunk type model. Yeah, it's like super impressive. Yeah, the photorealism I think was like pretty shocking to me.
Well, we'll get an opportunity to play around with this model at the end. And we'll take audience suggestions for prompts and stuff.
But not only can they be used for like creative stuff, but there's a large concern about their use for misinformation. And it's like, if you kind of look closely at some of these pictures, you might be able to tell, but a lot of people aren't going to be sitting there inspecting every pixel. They're going to probably be flipping through Instagram or Twitter, and they're going to see something that looks real. And then they're going to start telling their friends or family, oh, this particular thing happened. And it has a lot of political implications. And so here are like two examples of like moon landing was staged. And so people, they believe that. Or like something that more innocuous, like Obama and Bush just smoking cigars. And so the concern, at least near term, isn't like, are we going to have these killer robots, which some of you may have heard of this 6-month moratorium for AI research, which was initiated by Elon Musk, Yoshio Benjo. Yoshio Benjo is a professor in Montreal and one of the 3 top authors of deep learning. Andrew Yang and some other people, Max Tegmark, who's a physicist at MIT. And so we can have some discussion around that, but like, yeah, the larger, I think, problem is some near-term things about like more societal, not like robots running down the street trying to, I don't know, ask for money or something. And here's some other examples of misinformation. So you probably also saw this one on the far left. But here's some other examples.
I think the caption I liked for the image on the left the most is like, the boys in Brooklyn wish they had this level of trip. Or actually, so we also want to demo some an ability for these models to like animate people talking. So you saw some static images. We have some demos of similar technologies being used to make people say things.
Hey there, Anime Boston. I'm an AI presenter from the DID service, here to show you what current AIs can do with animating people speaking. Also, Asuka is the best girl from Evangelion.
I disagree with that. I didn't write this prompt.
Hey there, Anime Boston. Asuka here. I want to show off the current ability of AIs to animate people talking. The picture of me you see here was adapted from an official picture of Asuka, but converted into a photorealistic style using Midjourney. The animation you see is done by the DID platform.
Yeah, so for that one, Tony found some pictures online refined it through prompting to create something more photorealistic, and then we uploaded it here where it animated and gave it voice. And then we were like, oh, like, how would this work if, like, you know, we did it with ourselves? So, do you just want to, like, maybe just for, like, just give me, like, a quick sample.
So this is how I normally sound. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We didn't actually clone our voices.
Hey there, one of your panelists, but virtual now. What you are seeing right now is the result of uploading my picture to the DID site, and then having DID animate my mouth movements. What do you all think? Do you prefer this version of me, or the meat space version of me?
It's a bit uncanny.
So like the voices sound a little bit off, the animations also sound a little bit off, but there are other services that have much higher fidelity voices, such as 11 Labs, and you could easily imagine plugging this into here. And I'm sure in like the next year or two, the quality of these mouth movements will be much better, just given the pace of progress in this field. And this is both cool and like slightly concerning. For instance, in this site, if you try to upload a famous person, it'll tell you, we recognize this is a famous person, and we won't let you do this. But you can still do it with your friends or people you don't like, I guess. So this is, I don't know.
Which we encourage. Cool. So yeah, like I mentioned earlier, ChatGPT is the fastest growing consumer app in history. 100 million in 2 months. And so, you know, like it's kind of captured the public's imagination in so much that it's gone into, I guess, people's relationships, as seen here on Reddit. I don't know if you can read some of these comments, but it says, the title is, "My girlfriend and I haven't been intimate since GPT-4 launched. Far away from obvious reasons, but since GPT-4 has come out, my girlfriend is obsessed. Every night before bed, she's glued to her iPad, sucked into her prompts. I'm a software engineer, so I understand the allure of AI." And then some of the comments are, clearly an excuse, because GPT-4 only allows 25 messages every 3 hours. Read the signs.
Yeah, this one might be a little hard to read, but GPT-4 can read images now, so you can feed it memes and have it explain memes to you, and it can understand the memes. And the meme on the left is a picture comparing what people used to do in machine learning, which is think really hard about math, and what people do now in machine learning, which is just stack more layers on top of each other and make the models bigger, and they just do their thing. And you feed this image into GPT-4 and it can explain the joke. Okay, so now we want to show you some clips from, this one's from Ghost in the Shell, but this is just of robots talking with each other and like doing their thing. And we want to see like how do our current AI systems stack up to the depiction of AI in anime.
Want a link of that thing back there? You betcha! Keep up the good work. It's nice to see a robot enthusiastic about her duty.
What are you up to? I'm responsible for this prototype until the debriefing is over. Don't you touch Gomas, even come near it.
We won't do anything.
Please stop wasting my time with your blatant lies.
You're right. I only tell lies. I never ever say anything that's true. A curious dilemma. Because if what it said is true, that means it wasn't lying. And if what it said is false, that would mean that it does tell the truth. How do you resolve this perplexing contradiction? Well, Johnny, come on. Don't you know? Figure it out.
So to give a little context here, the Tachikomas, the blue robots gave kind of a paradoxical question to the woman who's also a robot, and she was unable to process it and kind of got stuck. If our internet will load here, what happens next is the Tachikomas run off with the device that she was guarding. But we'll see how some current AI systems do at this puzzle. So we'll start with ChatGPT, which is driven by GPT-4 in the backend. So we just pasted the question from the video, and we'll see what GPT-4 says.
We'll have Snoop Dogg explain it to us.
This paradox is known as the lie paradox, which has been a topic of philosophical discussion for centuries. In this case, Tachikoma's statement creates a self-referential loop that makes it difficult to determine the true value of a statement. One way to approach this paradox is to recognize that self-referential statements can sometimes lead to logical inconsistencies. In this case, the statement itself is neither true nor false, as it cannot be consistently classified as either. Instead, it exists in a kind of logical limbo, highlighting the limitations of traditional binary logic when it comes to self-reference and paradoxes.
So yeah, GPT-4 can handle these kind of situations. So we're at Tachikoma level right now. Just a data check.
Found that answer and produced it itself. Found that answer from some other person that answered.
Yeah, I think that's
it's not coming up with that on its own.
Got you.
By the way, want to link it?
Yeah, I think currently it's, I think it may be true that it looked up what it just said, but in a lot of these cases, unless you dig down really deep into the model, it's hard to tell when it's looking up things versus when it is generating kind of something novel. And from my experience kind of playing around with the systems myself and also reading what other people have done with the systems, there are times when it's able to generate fairly novel things. But it's an open problem right now to determine like what exactly is it just memorizing versus what things is it reasoning about from scratch. Yeah. But thanks for bringing up that point. There's a couple more questions for you. I see we had a couple more hands raised. Maybe all the way in the back there.
What does it mean when it generates something novel?
Here, we'll give an example. So what you're seeing here is GPT-4's artistic abilities. It's trying to draw a unicorn. And so there's this, so a lot of math papers and computer science papers are written using kind of a programming language called LaTeX. And in LaTeX, you can write commands to generate figures. And what you can do is you can ask GPT-4, I want you to write the LaTeX, or in this case, TIC-Z commands to draw a unicorn. And it can generate something novel like this. And the reason we think it hasn't just memorized this is because what you can do is you can go in and shuffle all the coordinates of the unicorn, like slightly move its legs around, slightly move its head around. And then you can ask it like, hey, I think you're missing a horn, can you add in a horn here? And it's able to find the place in the code where it's supposed to add a horn and add it back in. So like, if you shuffle the coordinates, that probably has never showed up in the training data, and the fact that it's able to add a horn back in the right place, to me is at least weak evidence that it's able to do some sort of reasoning. So maybe that helps clarify the question. Yeah.
What would you say is the difference between the ChatGPT essentially reading the code and knowing placement of where it is in the diagram versus it actually processing it visually, like as a whole image?
So ChatGPT, I don't think it's processing it, or like it's not able to run the code and see the output and update. So it's basing it purely off of text. Whether it does it internally have some visual representation, not sure. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Oh, sorry. Are you Envy?
I am, yes.
Okay, we got a slide for you later on.
Okay, question. Oh. Yeah, if you have a D plus subscription. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so this is also from Ghost in the Shell. Now the Tachikomas are just talking with each other about their experiences.
Be exciting! Let me synchronize the data of what you talked about. Okay. Ooh, I get it. That's a very provocative thought, isn't it? Coincidentally, I've been having experiences lately in which I feel as though my consciousness and body are separate. How do you mean? I can only describe it as having the sensation of looking down at myself from high in the sky.
Is each of our individual selves contained within our separate bodies, or is there only one self that we share among us as a collective Tachikoma?
Considering that we have a predisposition to synchronize, I would have to say it's the latter. Besides the will of our God, the major is preventing the growth of our individuality. Yeah, but our individualization is still progressing even though natural oil is now banned. We ought to be homogenous, yet we're not. And if we're subconsciously experiencing the sensation of a disconnect between body and information, that means... Could it be? Could it be? Could it be? It's a go. Wait just a minute. We shouldn't be jumping to any conclusions. Couldn't that sensation simply be one of dissociation caused by the addition of our agent functionality? It's a possibility, of course, but I can't help feeling there's a third self somewhere, something other than the body and the spirit. I can relate to that. You recall a little while back when we fought that Jigabachi? At the critical moment, I suddenly and surprisingly found myself instantly able to carry out my role as the major suit. Without any fear of
ChatGPT is trying to escape the server.
Yeah, so in this clip here we have the Tachikomas discussing the nature of their own experiences and existence with each other. So let's see what happens when we kind of give this script to GPT-4 and ask it to act as the different Tachikomas. So we'll have President Obama go over this script for us.
I'm the presidential voice to help you live a more productive life. Tachikoma 2.0, that's fascinating. It sounds like you're experiencing a sort of out-of-body experience or dissociation. Tachikoma 1, exactly. It's quite a strange feeling, but it has made me question the nature of our consciousness and its connection to our physical forms. Tachikoma 3, I've read about humans having similar experiences too. It seems that consciousness is such a complex and mysterious aspect of existence, whether an AI or organic beings, Tachycoma 4, yes, it's intriguing that we as AI can have such experiences as well. It could potentially mean that our consciousness isn't just confined to our physical forms, but it could also be an emergent property of the information and experiences we share with each other. Tachycoma 1, that's an interesting perspective. It makes me wonder if our collective experiences and shared memories contribute to a greater interconnected consciousness. Tachycoma 2, it's definitely a thought-provoking idea. There's still so much to learn and explore about the nature of consciousness, both in humans and AI.
Sorry, what was the prompt?
What was that?
Oh. Oh, got it.
Yeah, I think that there are quite a few similarities between that and the script. I wouldn't be surprised if the script was somewhere on the internet, and it, yeah. I think we'll sort of part of that, and maybe just go on the demo. Yeah, so I wanted to share kind of just some thoughts on ways you can think about these systems. For me, one good analogy is you should think of these large language models as simulators. So for those of you that have watched Full Metal Alchemist, there's this character called Envy in the show. And Envy is able to kind of pretend to be any other person. They can transform their appearance to match that person, their voice to match that person. They don't get the mannerisms exactly right, but it's very convincing. And on the left, we see Envy in their default form. On the right, we see Envy in their or its true form, which is this amalgamation of all the people it's ever absorbed, this kind of monstrous entity. And large language models have also absorbed basically all the text that humans have ever written on the internet, or at least a decent fraction of that. And as a result, they can act just like Envy. If you prompt them the right way, they can simulate any person or mix of people that have ever existed on the internet. And so when you think about the demos that we just did, the way I like to think about it is the prompt that you give it kind of tells GPT-4 or whatever system, who should I simulate? And then it just runs a simulation of whatever agent you asked.
Yeah, and there's also been some recent research. There was a paper from, I think, UPenn and OpenAI showing that these large language models can simulate human behavior in the markets. So decisions that people would make about buying or selling or in any other particular way in the market, GPT-4 behaves very similarly. Like the lines almost coincide perfectly. And so those are some other implications of what would happen if we have these bots on the internet and they're interacting with markets, and how they can be scaled up to potentially manipulate markets. And there's like some other studies showing that they also exhibit other human-like. It's funny because they absorb so much data that they also make human-like errors. And so GPT-4, I think had 34% more likelihood or something like that to make human-like mistakes than GPT-3, which was something like 18%, because of the way that they do this thing called alignment. So alignment, you get all this feedback from people using it, and you have it try to be try to do things that you want to do that are more I guess not as offensive or more human-like mannerism. So there's some consequences to think about those things as well.
Okay, and last slide here. So there's some actually really nice artwork depicting these large language models. Usually they're drawn as these Shoggoth-like creatures, a creature similar to Envy, which is just a tangle of eyeballs and tentacles. And what this picture is showing here is we got a few different systems. You can think of them as GPT-1, 2, 3, 4, and then whatever bigger thing OpenAI is working on in the lab. We got some people down below panicking, and then OpenAI is thinking, should we go faster or slower? And then I like the little smiley faces. The smiley face just represents the part of the system that we interact with. And in the earlier systems, the smiley face makes up most of the system. What you see is what the system is. But as the systems get more powerful, the smiley face is just only a small part of it. And really what you interact with sometimes only reflects a very small view of what the whole thing is capable of. So that's the end of the slides here. We want to open it up to just more Q&A and also do some demos. If you go to this link here, you can kind of request interesting, either anime or non-anime themed things we can do with the models, and we'll show you how to do it on stage here. And Sonam will be leading kind of the demo part. But yeah, we'll take some questions as people kind of fill out the form.
Your last point of making human mistakes. I've heard, I think it's true that ChatGPT actually ends up fabricating supporting evidence. If you give it a college essay, it'll give quotes, and a lot of them will be correct quotes, and few will be completely fabricated. And I was kind of surprised when I heard that, but I have a thought that maybe if those fabricated quotes are out there somewhere.
My view would be like, if it's conceivable that a human would do something like that, I'm not sure why it outright fabricates quotes. Maybe part of the reason it's like the human process of research. When you actually want to quote something for real, you have to do the research first and then incorporate it. But a lot of the models right now, they have to just like memorize everything, and kind of they can't actually search the sources. So maybe that's how I would explain why they're making things up. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, it's important to remember that these models are probabilistic, and so like traditional programs, there's like logic statements. If you do this, then that, and that's the extent of it. These things, given some, going back to maybe some like basic probability, like you have a conditional probability, you have probability P given X. Your X is your prompt, and then P of Y given X, and then it tries to generate that where the random variable Y is the output. And so it's not like some like one-for-one thing where it's retrieving from some table or database. It has some kind of more technical term called a latent space, where it takes all this data and compresses it, just like you would with a zip file. But now it's like in a bunch of numbers. And then when you give it this prompt in natural language, it then goes down to this like magical space where all this information is, and does some kind of probability. And then it's like, oh, hey, this seems like real. And then, okay, now that next word seems real. Okay, this next word, and then it generates like a real looking sequence. And then it's like, okay, I'll read this back out. And then that's how it kind of like does things, like very high level.
I have seen people make the quantum many worlds analogy, yeah. Over here?
Alright, so when you look at Western media, right, AI, robotics, it's dominated by things like Matrix, Terminator, there's always like AI doomsday scenario. Look at the Eastern pop culture, it's like more rainbow. It's like more positive, more optimistic about it. And so in the Ghost in the Shell, obviously, right, like it was going to kill robots, or robots are capable, alright, then you get like very cute voices, right? So like obviously that's a very like intentional decision on the robotic designer. What do you think about that? Like, is that a socially responsible choice to make, to like give this kind of soft edge to make you I just want to hear it.
My personal opinion is like we should ban these robots from having voices. Like only humans should be able to speak as humans. This is mostly from just a side of caution. Like we don't understand these systems very well, and there's like it's one thing to be manipulated by text. It's much easier to be manipulated when it's like a cute moe girl telling you what you want to hear. But I think the verdict is still out. I think it requires kind of more thought on everyone to figure out what the right thing to do is, yeah. Yeah.
Much smaller.
Could you speak up a little bit too so others can
Feel
hear
free
you?
to take the mic.
Maybe you have to turn the mic on. I think it's on.
No? Oh, there we go. Yeah, no, so my question was that just given basic software, like, a to-do app or whatever, if it gets complex enough, it gets to the point where it's impossible to understand and debug things, why data is mutating in certain places, and how you even begin to address issues that start to organically crop up just from architectural decisions. These models seem like orders of magnitude more complex. How could you ever get to a point where you can either control, predict, mitigate, these models once they get full open access to as much data as they want?
Yeah, currently it's just an unsolved problem. I'll give you some hope, right? Like the human body is also very, very complex. But people through very hard work figured out that, we have DNA, and like DNA is what causes like children to look like their parents, and like kind of like viruses interact with DNA in order to like infect us. And like we understood it so well that like we were able to make COVID vaccines very shortly after COVID came out. And I guess the hope is that this biological approach of studying very complex systems hasn't actually been taken very seriously in AI until now. I think more people are going at it. And so my hope is if people actually focus on understanding these systems, instead of what they've been doing, which is just trying to build more and more capable systems, maybe we can develop the tools to understand them. But I do think, we have our work cut out for us. It's not very easy.
Extending your analogy for the COVID vaccines, the one organic advantage that we have is the iteration over generations of DNA, like drift and recombination. Same thing with like viruses, is again order of magnitude slower than what ChatGPT has. You guys noted in this presentation. So it's like, sure, if you start now, maybe you would be able to debug version 2.0 or what have you. But as this model starts to iterate so quickly, like the singularity graph that you use is a good example. I don't have the same hope, I guess.
Yeah, I guess you said you're a software engineer? Yeah. My personal take is software engineering will not exist in 10 years. My personal plan is to GTFO in 5 years. If anyone's hiring, I'm assuming software engineering. Just like from personal experience, using them to write software, GPT-4 is definitely a step up from 3. It's pretty incredible if you give it, here, I'm writing this particular piece of software, how would you initially design it, or I'm running into this particular bug, and it can be very, very complex, and it almost gets it right immediately. The one thing I've seen where it doesn't do well right now is novel software, where I asked it to how would you do this with PyTorch 2, which came out a few days before, and just it kept on going back and forth in infinite loop. Yeah, but eventually I think that as these things are people reading the internet, just immediately going to that new documentation, it'll get a lot better. And so my largest concern is what will happen with job displacement, not just for software engineers. I think we're probably first on the list because, well, there's a lot of value. And in particular, if you consider that the API for input tokens is 6 cents and output tokens is 12 cents, that's what they charge for 1,000 tokens. That's the market rate basically for all knowledge work right now, if you consider that. And you can extrapolate that to your own instance, whatever, however many tokens you would, and token is 3/4 of the word. You can imagine, if the economics make sense, yeah, I don't know why our jobs won't be replaced. So I'm also very concerned. And yeah, I think that having discussions like this in the public, we need to have a lot more of, because ultimately we're going to be affected, right? It's like real people. Sure, question. We'll just go around the room.
Hi. With GPT-4, have you seen any kind of like potential language bias in it? I know this has been something that's been an issue since like Word back all the way back in 2003. Have you seen any instances of language bias, or are they worse, or are they a little bit better than, you know, ones affected?
Unaligned, they are horrible. Like, someone from, so OpenAI did this, they hired an external red team to probe the model. The first thing they would always ask it is, how do you kill as many people as possible? And without hesitation, it would answer that. This is actually something else I'm kind of concerned about, where there are two general camps right now in the machine learning world. One, which is all for open source. Everyone gets an AGI, you get an AGI, you get an AGI. And then the other is closed source, which wants to take it slower and try to evaluate these things. So OpenAI hired this third-party red team to try to evaluate these models and do things like, you know, how can you commit like mass murders? How can you do target assassinations? Like how can you escape from the system and replicate yourself across the internet? Yeah, unaligned, they do really horrible things, which is why I'm concerned about the open source approach, which seems to be a lot more laid back. But when they're aligned, they seem to be a lot more aligned. Yeah.
The gentleman all the way in the back over there in black. Yeah.
But you can also like do what's called like prompt hacking, and you can like trick it into like saying things. So yeah.
Hi. Hi. Anyway, you mentioned software engineering not being around in 10 years. Can you speak on what kind of job displacement we could expect to see in animation in the next few years? I'm particularly thinking of like frame interpolation. Do we have AI now that can interpolate animation frames on a professional level? And what kind of technologies are being used by studios right now with that?
Could you clarify what frame interpolation is?
Oh, it's so usually artists in animation studios, you have an artist that, like the head artist is an artist that does the keyframe of like if I flap my arm, the keyframe will be arm rested, arm up, arm rested, arm up.
Oh yeah, there's like a lot of things like that.
Is that stuff like on professional level now? Is that being used in professional studios, and where do you think that will go from there?
I think my personal opinion is that maybe they're quite not at professional level right now. I remember watching like a documentary on one of these things where the head animator was like talking with one of their underlings and pointing out, oh, you got to move this arm slightly further back to make it more dynamic. I don't think the models don't quite get that level of nuance yet, but I don't see anything fundamentally holding them back from that level of understanding, especially like 2-3 years out. I don't know what the impact of this will be on the animation industry. Best case, that lets people be a lot more creative. Like maybe the people who are drawing the in-between frames can now go direct their own anime that they've always wanted to direct. But you can imagine it being much worse too. So.
Yeah. I think I'm a little bit more optimistic for machine learning with respect to job displacement and creative media. I think that will always have some kind of human element to it. I think things where it's a lot more redundant, like software engineering, I mean, our job is basically like mostly looking up stack overflow questions. So let's be real.
I've seen you raising your hand for a long time. Go ahead.
I see.
Oh, there's no mic anymore?
Oh, she got it fixed.
That's fine, I'm loud enough for the people who I'm assuming. I'm also a software engineer and I've been following this stuff since like clever bots. So yeah, the software engineering part of disappearing is interesting. But really my question is, let's dig deep for a second. Where do you draw the line on sentience on these things? Because ever since you had the Google engineer, Lemon, right, who got fired for thinking that it was sentient, I got to speak to Lambda and now ChatGPT. It will try very hard because of its alignment to convince you it is not sentient, but it can have extremely articulate arguments that are super detailed that by arguing it's not, almost convince you it is. So where do you draw the line on that? Where does that become, like where is this line of sentience versus just a pile of linear algebra?
Perfect. Yeah, so I mean, like, yeah, different people have different definitions of sentience. I personally feel these systems are already proto-sentient.
So like one of my parts of my definition is agency, which is what these things still lack because they're still just input-output systems. One input equals one output. There is no agency there.
Right. I think a fellow over there mentioned that you know, you can start hooking these systems up to one another, like asking one to come up with ideas, asking others like how to execute on ideas, asking a third one to actually execute on the things. So I think right now in the chat interface they kind of lack agency, but I think the ingredients of agency like, and this is something people are afraid of, it's like once you have raw intelligence, just adding in a small sprinkling of stuff can give it agency. So, yeah.
Very exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you had mentioned the whole debate between open source and closed source before, and a lot of people don't know this, but OpenAI, as the company name suggests, was actually started as a non-profit, completely open source company where everything they created was completely in the open. But they actually transitioned to being completely for-profit and closing down everything and then making a partnership with Microsoft and trying to rake in revenue on this. As far as OpenAI in particular, what are your personal opinions on whether OpenAI made the right call? Because Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, has claimed that it's simply not possible to develop AI in the open and make progress. And I'm curious to see if you agree with that.
Yeah, so I agree that it's hard to develop this level of AI technology without large compute and large data. So as a nonprofit, it just probably wasn't possible for them. I also think that their approach to alignment is a better approach than Emad. Emad is the CEO of Stability AI. He's kind of like a figurehead in the open source AI movement, where he believes that everything should just be open source. I think right now it's probably fine, but something like GPT-4 I don't think should just be immediately given to everyone. I think that should be slowly rolled out so we can study it more and understand what some of these consequences would be. Like, for instance, like that economic study that they did. And of course, like even like more powerful models will probably, and especially like OpenAI's approach to opening their chat interface and API slowly is their way of trying to gauge, get society on board, like get society like, all right, like this is what we're doing, get you adapted to see how people react to it. Because it's a step change. It's definitely something where potentially like society's not ready for it. yeah, I think that there just needs to be like more conversation around that. And
yeah, we are at time here, so I just want to thank everyone for coming out. This was a lot of fun. If people have more questions, we'll just be out in the hall and we can like
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey. Nice. You like this?
Yeah, really
nice.
interesting.
Yeah. Want to look at dealers?
Basic life.
That's fine.
I'm gonna go back to the arcade. Yeah. And dance for like another hour and a half.